Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is the Somali refugee. The reason why she was a refugee from the country is because while she was in her country, it was her family that was the ruling family. And they were so brutal that the Somali people, rose up and threw them out of power. And that's how she ended up a refugee from her country. Okay, so then the government in the United States groups all these thousands and thousands and thousands of Somalis in one place over in Minnesota. Okay, she is elected their representative, right? We're not going to talk about all her irregularities, which are like crazy, marrying her brother. Okay, but when she goes to Congress, she's $40,000 in debt, but now she is worth $30 million. Corruption from the beginning, corruption to the end. Corruption is who she is.
Well, now investigators are tracking the web of fraud to other Minnesota Democrats, such as Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Many of the suspects linked to the scheme live in her district, including a restaurant owner who hosted events for her. He has since been convicted of stealing $12 million in COVID funds.
The president told you, though, this week to look into Somalis who, quote, ripped off that state for billions of dollars. He said they contribute nothing. What exactly are you investigating?
Well, Margaret, to be clear, the initial fraud that was discovered by the IRS, for which I'm the acting commissioner, is discovered by IRS Criminal Investigations Unit. This was not an endogenous thing that the state of Minnesota decided. We had to go in and clean up the mess for them, and this is part of the continued cleanup. A lot of money has been transferred from the individuals who committed this fraud, including those who donated to the governor, donated to Representative Omar, and donated to A.G. Ellison. But they've been transferred to something called MBSs. And those are...
Mortgage-backed security? What do you mean?
Sorry?
Transferred to what?
These are money, the Bureau services, and they are wire transfer organizations that are outside the regulated banking system. And that money has gone overseas. And we are tracking that both to the Middle East and to Somalia to see what the uses of that have been.
Okay, but you have no evidence of that money being used to fuel terrorism at this point, which is what some conservative writers are alleging.
That's why it's an investigation. We started it last week. We'll see where it goes. But I can tell you that, it's terrible. Representative Omar tried to downplay it, said, it was very, it was very tough to know how this money should be used. Yeah. She was gaslighting the American people.
Well, we'll talk to her.
Yeah, but when you come to this country, you got to learn which side of the road to drive on. You got to learn to stop at stop signs, and you got to learn not to defraud the American people.
What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you guys pulling up today. As I always say, follow the money. Seriously, follow the money, and you will find what you're looking for. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he just detonated the entire political landscape. He confirmed that there is an active investigation into Minnesota's welfare fraud catastrophe, the same one Ilhan Omar now claims was entirely too hard to detect. Really? When over $250 million in Feeding Our Future fraud was documented, she's saying that it was too hard to detect? Y'all couldn't detect $250 million, $250 million being stolen? Really? When federal prosecutors called it the largest pandemic fraud case in America, and when more than 60 people were federally charged, suddenly it was just hard to detect, hard to see. Cut it out, man. Seriously. And then you watch her reaction on CBS. She did not expect that Margaret Brennan would show up with receipts. Brennan, who we already know what time it is, mainstream media, quote unquote journalists. These people are friends of the daggone DNC. These people are the propaganda arm of the DNC. Typically, when a liberal gets on those shows, they typically get tossed a few softballs. It's normally extremely friendly, but this wasn't necessarily the case. Brennan laid out the facts: over $1 billion in taxpayer COVID funds stolen during the relief or COVID relief. Dozens of indictments have come from this. Federal investigators tracing money through shell companies, fake mill sites, and oversee wire transfers, so forth and so on. She even laid out evidence in the grand jury filing and the DOJ press releases. And Ilhan Omar's defense is, I don't know what he's referring to. That's not an answer. That's not an answer, ma'am. That is panic wrapped in politeness. She admitted that people connected to her campaign donated money and that she quietly, conveniently refunded the money a few years ago. I got a question. Why would you do that? How did you know to return the money, and what triggered the return? That's the question that no one in corporate media ever asked. And when Brennan pressed her and actually read DOJ numbers out loud, even she sounded stunned. You could see it in her face. We're going to get into it here in a second. CBS, all of the outlets saying that, hey, this was the largest, this was the biggest COVID era fraud scheme in the country, not in Minnesota, not in the Midwest, this was the entire nation. Federal indictments didn't hide the details. They actually spelled it out. We're talking fake invoices, fake meal counts, fake children, luxury homes, luxury cars, and overseas transfers. Follow the money. Now, they said that the money was routed through these networks. Investigators are still unraveling it. You heard Scott Besnick call them MBSs. This is crazy. This is crazy. And Omar's response is, I don't think the secretary understands what he's referring to. Nah, I think he understands it. These are some pretty smart people over there in the Trump administration. He understands exactly what he's referring to. And the president has told him, hey, run the investigation, follow the money, and expose every layer of this situation. And this is why Democrats are sweating. Because once these fraud networks started to collapse, they didn't just lead the nonprofits. They led straight into the coffers of the political machine out there in Minnesota. So the question becomes this. If this fraud was so massive, so well documented, and so visible that even CBS can't ignore it, how did Minnesota's leaders somehow miss it for years? It makes me think that they didn't miss it. They're in on the grift. Hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it, man.
To get to with you, but I want to pick up on where the Treasury Secretary just left off. He alleged that people who were tied to you or your campaign were involved in this broad, brazen scheme to rip off the Minnesota state welfare system. Do you want to respond to that? Do you know what he is referring to?
I really don't, and I don't think the secretary himself understands what he's referring to. We obviously had people who were able to donate to our campaign that were involved. We sent that money back a couple years ago. And actually, I was one of the first members of Congress to send a letter to the Secretary of Ag asking them to look into what I thought was a reprehensible fraud that was occurring within the program.
So this was, just for our audience, the Biden-era Justice Department called it the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country. And this was pocketing COVID-era welfare funds, more than $1 billion in taxpayer money that was stolen. It was pretty shocking. Of the 87 people charged.
She doesn't even look like she's telling the truth. But I want to push back a little bit on Brennan. Why didn't you ask what triggered you sending the money back? Why didn't you ask? That should have been the immediate follow-up question. Oh, you sent the money back? Why? What triggered that? What made you say, you know what, we need to send this money back? Why? What? Where's the proper journalist questions? Who, what, why, when, and how? I think that's what it is.
All but 8 are of Somali descent. And that has added to the spotlight being put specifically on your community. Why do you think this fraud was allowed to get so widespread?
Well, I want to say, this also has an impact on Somalis because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota. We also could have benefited from the program and the money that was stolen. And so it's been really frustrating for people to not acknowledge the fact that we're also, as Minnesotans, as taxpayers, really upset and angry about the fraud that has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of a sudden, they're victims in all of this. So your people come over here, defraud the nation for billions upon billions of dollars. Let's just keep it a buck. They say it's anywhere between $6.5 and $8 billion. And then you're going to get here and sit on national TV with your violin and say, hey, we're the victims in all of this, when you guys are the perpetrators.
So do you think, though, that there was a failure by the Democratic state government to police itself? This is a brazen, fraudulent activity here.
Yeah, and that is what I alluded to in my letter that I'd sent to the Secretary of Eg, was to see where things were going wrong. How can this amount of money disappear fraudulently without there being alarms being set off? And it is something that, we have to continue to investigate. We have to continue to ask those questions.
If you really had a concern, seriously, if you really had a concern, why is this the first time that we're hearing you speak on the fraud? Seriously, if there was really a concern, you are a representative, someone that lives in Minnesota, in the Minneapolis area, if you found out about this, why is this the first time that we're hearing from you saying that this is an issue? I would assume that if this was really an issue and you knew about it, you'd have been talking about this for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Come on, man.
Because, as you know, one of the initial defenses by the organization at the heart of the fraud, Feeding Our Future, was to claim the probe was due to racism. Do you think that this was all about negligence, or that it was like political fear of alienating the Somali community?
So you have to remember that the woman who led the program is a Caucasian woman. And that was her way of making sure that this would continue to happen by using whatever rhetoric that was available to her. We do know that when the money was stopped, they did sue. The AG, Attorney General Keith Ellison, defended the department in that lawsuit. It was a judge that said it should continue, that money should continue to go out. And so this wasn't something that people were not looking at. There was always those alarms, and we will continue to understand where things might have gone wrong as these investigations continue and as these fraudsters are prosecuted and sent to jail.
Well, it's going to have impact for your community, because we've already heard that the head of Medicare and Medicaid say they're going to have a new policy that applies to Minnesota. You heard the Treasury Secretary say they're investigating. But there's another thread here, because House Republicans and the Treasury Secretary just now talked about a link to terrorism, a possible link. He said they're just now beginning to look into it. How confident?
Before she answers that question, I do want to say this. I want to give a little bit of credit and some props to Brennan for asking these questions. But do you notice how nice she is about this? If these accusations were being, levied at a conservative, a Republican, a conservative state, a Republican state, or, people that are members of the GOP in any state around the country, and they were having to sit there to answer, that Brennan would be way more hostile in the approach, in the questioning. She's still throwing up some softballs, although she is asking the, tougher questions. But her follow-ups are lackluster, and she's way nicer about it. This approach here, this right here just really solidifies that even when mainstream media has to do their job, they do it not really wanting to do their job in the same way that they would had Ilhan Omar been, let's say, Wesley Hunt having to account for some fraud down there in Texas. She would be way more hostile with him than she is with this lady or any other Democrat for that matter.
Are you that that's a false claim?
I'm pretty confident at the moment, because there are people who have been prosecuted and who have been sentenced. If there was a linkage in that the money that they had stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI and our court system in not figuring that out and basically charging them with these charges. And so I do know that.
Body language matters.
For many years, this sort of like alarm that there is money being transferred through the airport in bags and going to terrorism that accusation has always existed. There's never been here and there in those accusations. But if that is the case, if money from U.S. tax dollars is being sent to help with terrorism in Somalia, we want to know.
Yeah.
And we want those people prosecuted. And we want to make sure that that doesn't ever happen again.
So there are 80.
This lady's full of sugar honey iced tea. And just, I'm telling you, body language matters, man. Look at her. Look at the way she looks. Look at her demeanor. You can tell she's not on the up and up. And she's lying right now. I don't know what she's lying about, but I can just see it. And it's not going to surprise me one bit once this investigation is concluded that all of these things that they are saying that has allegedly happened has actually happened. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if this lady's name is all over it in some shape, way, form, or fashion.
1,000 people of Somali descent in your state. But the president has been very focused not just on them, but on you. In this extraordinary cabinet meeting, he said Somalis, quote, come from hell. They complain and they do nothing but bitch. Take a listen.
These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. We don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much, everybody.
I knew you guys feel the same way the president feels. We don't want to murder a nation. Let them go back to their country and fix their own country. These are also the same people that believe that the president of Somalia is their president, and they believe that everything that they're doing here should benefit the country of Somalia. And if they really feel that way, they should go back over there. Fix your own nation.
That knocking is vehement agreement from his cabinet members there. I just wonder what the reaction is in your district to have that from the highest office in the land.
It's disgusting. It's completely disgusting. These are Americans that he is calling garbage. And we feel like there is an unhealthy obsession that he has on the Somali community and an unhealthy and creepy obsession that he has with me. I think it is also really important for us to remember that this kind of hateful rhetoric and this level of dehumanizing can lead to dangerous actions by people who listen to the president.
I feel the exact same way the president feels. Seriously. These people didn't come over here to assimilate. They came over to take over. They don't come over here to add. They come to take. They come to scam, defraud. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing. And I don't have a lot of sympathy, for individuals like this. I don't. And what we do know is, and we've found out recently that conclave that they have up there in Minnesota is by design. And that's why she's in the role that she's in. They sent 70, 80,000 people up there in Minneapolis and then allowed these people to take over. So much so that they've changed the flag of Minnesota to mimic the flag of Somalia. What more do you need to know? Seriously. I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. What are your thoughts on this entire situation? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on so you never miss an upload. Consider joining the ARP family or buy your brother a coffee. The link's in the description box below. Join us Monday through Friday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for ARP in the morning. And as always, keep God first, stay prayed up. We'll catch up with you all next time. Peace.
Vibes so raw.